What's going on, English 108? I hope everybody out there is doing well and is ready for spring break. I know I am. So I want to take this time to talk to you a little bit about your technical reviews, which I had a great time reading at the end of last week. And I also want to take this time to talk to you a little bit about what we're going to be doing at the end of week 7 into spring break and then a little bit after, which is writing a set of instructions. And I want to sort of lay a foundation for that and talk to you about how we're going to approach that assignment. So as far as the technical reviews go, I think everybody did a pretty good job of talking about their experiences with a product. But there were a couple of common themes or things that I found myself writing to a lot of people, and they're things that I just want to reiterate to you as you work on your revisions. You'll note that I'm giving you until Sunday to turn those in as a final draft, and that's mostly because we had the delay with Blackboard in terms of its upgrade and things like that. So I realized that put people behind the 8 ball, and you guys have really busy lives, and so I realized that some people like to get all their work done early in the week because they work on the weekends and whatnot. So I just want to make sure I'm giving you plenty of time. Certainly you can revise that earlier in the week if that's your prerogative, and that's fine too. So as far as things that I saw in the reviews, overall they were pretty well written at the sentence level. I mean, nobody really bombarded me with jargon or anything like that, so that's really good. I didn't feel overwhelmed. I read about a lot of things that I don't have a lot of experience in, particularly things related to fabrication and welding. And most of those I understood, and so that's a really good thing. If someone like me who's not very technically savvy in those areas can understand, then probably most anybody can. So that's a really good sign. Remember, just because you're writing in plain, simple language doesn't mean that the writing itself is simple. Actually, it takes a greater command of language and a greater command of your knowledge to be able to portray things in really simple ways. And frankly, as technical writers, that's one of our goals, is to make sure that we're writing as plainly, as simple as possible. And that's sort of owning to the fact that in the workplace, a lot of times our writing will circulate to a variety of people, many of whom don't share the same expertise as us. So sometimes we may be writing, and we may imagine our audience being other technicians or other experts, but that piece of writing, might be a proposal, may end up circulating to the finance department of the company, and you need to make sure that people with a different training and a different frame of mind can understand what you're getting at. So that was a real strength of most people's technical reviews. A couple of things that I found myself saying quite frequently. One is to provide some context of how you use the product. So it's really helpful for your reader to know exactly how you used and applied the product. So for instance, if I'm reviewing a lawnmower, a push lawnmower, talking to people about how I used it and what I used it for is going to go a long way in helping them interpret my experience with it. So, there's a big difference between, using a push lawnmower to, whack down a weedy, bushy field as compared to, using it to manicure like a perfectly level lawn. So, giving some framework about the use, the usage and the context in which you use the product is really important. And that's true of anything. So it's really important, and part of that reflects on or is related to your expertise. There's a big difference between using something in a residential capacity versus a commercial capacity. So just giving some insight is really going to provide good contextual clues to the reader, and it's going to give them a framework for understanding just sort of the paces that you put the product through. So that's one thing that I found myself saying. The other thing I found myself saying was to make comparisons. And to make sure that we're comparing apples to apples, one of the things that I wanted you to keep in mind was that people use these reviews and these assessments to make decisions. So we want to give people enough information to make that decision. And one really key piece of information is how this product differentiates itself from other products. So you should take a look at the criteria that you've used, and you should try to make a comparison in each one of those criteria to other products that you've had experience with. So that's really generative. That allows us to see how that particular product performs against other competitors. So that's just really helpful. The other thing was to illustrate your claims with experience. So to show me how you've actually used this. So if you're talking about a tool, talk about a project that you use the tool for, and talk about the advantages of it and what your experience actually looked like. So what we don't want to do, and this is actually a great lesson if we're talking about selling stuff too, or promoting stuff or marketing stuff, what we don't want to do is just reside at the level of features. So we don't just want to talk abstractly about materials and technology. We want to make sure that the reader really understands the benefit of those things. And the way to do that is to show how humans actually interact with it and use it. And so that's a really important lesson. Don't just talk to me about the features of a product, talk to me about the benefits or maybe the limitations of something. So you may find that a particular feature actually is a hindrance or that it doesn't work efficiently or effectively, and that's fine. But I don't want you just to talk about it sort of abstractly. I want you to bring it down into concrete language, and that's really helpful. It breathes life into it, and it really helps the reader see and understand and appreciate the assessments that you're making. So that's really important to me. The other thing that I think is really important to talk about, and I found myself writing this on a lot of folks' reviews, is that we really have to think carefully about how we use paragraphs. So there's a lot of misinformation out there about what a paragraph is. Just for fun sometimes I like to ask classes, live classes when I have the opportunity to have that immediate interaction and response. I like to say, hey, what is a paragraph? And invariably somebody in the class will raise their hand and they'll say, well, it's a collection of sentences that's between 5 and 8 sentences or something like that, and that's not really a good way to think about it. A paragraph, especially in a technical and professional environment, should be thought of as a single unit of thought. Okay, and so it represents a single unit of thought. And actually, you're probably better off erring on the side of breaking into too many paragraphs than not enough. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that nobody wants to open up a document and see a giant wall of text that's not divided, subdivided, chunked, compartmentalized in some way. It's daunting, it's overwhelming, it's hard if you leave the document to find your place, it's hard to scan and find the information that you care about, and it's generally just not user-friendly. The other thing that does is it lumps everything together. So it's hard, we think of paragraphs as being relatively innocuous and innocent and not really that important, but actually they represent how we're sort of the buckets that we're putting information in and how we're dividing the topic and the themes that we're developing. And so, it's one of those things, it's kind of an art form. There's no hard and fast rule. I'm not going to tell you it's a certain number of sentences, but anytime that you feel yourself shifting gears, shifting focus, I want you to break into a new paragraph. And actually, I want you to feel comfortable when you're writing, especially in these longer documents that we're going to write. If you want to have section headings, so big, bold words that divide the document up into little parts and segments and chunks, that's good too. So, the natural way to do that with a review, and you saw this with the examples that we looked at, and many people mimic this, is to divide the review based on your criteria. So maybe to have an introduction that introduces kind of how you came to own the product, what you use it for, your general assessment, and then you could go and individually talk about durability, price, features, performance, whatever the criteria are, and then take each one of those at a time. What I saw too often was that people were lumping multiple assessments, multiple criteria into these really dense paragraphs, and that's really not a good idea because, again, it's overwhelming. You almost get information overload. It's hard to know when, as a reader, you can sort of take a breath and sort of reflect on what you've just read. So, again, I may regret saying this because someone may take it to the nth degree, but I really think you're better off erring on the side of having too many short paragraphs, especially in a business and professional environment, than you are to have too many a small set of large paragraphs. And that's something that you're going to have to work on over time, and I'll try to help you with that by providing individual feedback on that, because it really is an art form, and there's some level of interpretation there. But again, anytime I feel myself shifting gears, I like to do that. In the context of this particular assignment, and this is really important, and this is kind of the test that you can hold yourself accountable to, really your paragraphs are probably going to follow a pretty routine structure. And it follows a basic argumentative structure, which goes claim, evidence, warrant. Okay? And what that essentially means is you're making some claim about the product. You're going to say, these boots are really durable. That's a claim. Generally speaking, you're going to follow that with some amount of evidence. Okay, so you're probably going to provide, some personal experience. You're going to reflect on the construction of the boot. You may make a comparison to other boots that you've owned to really drive home that point that these are really durable boots. And then you're going to explain why this matters. Okay, and each one of your paragraphs is probably going to follow that structure. And actually, anytime you're writing persuasively, that's a really good structure by which to organize your paragraphs. Make a claim, support the claim with evidence that you think will be meaningful to your audience, and then explain why all of this is so important to the larger message of the document. So that's just something to keep in mind. Those were some things that I observed, and I think they're things that, frankly, everybody can improve on. And again, I want you to remember that one of the things that I'm trying to instill in you by the way that the course is organized and by the way that I teach is that the only foolproof way that I know to become a better writer is to spend time developing a piece of writing in the same way that an engineer develops a solution to a problem. Okay? We're going to draft it, which is like prototyping. We're going to test it by getting feedback from your peers and from me, and then using that feedback, using that data, using that input, then we're going to revise. And we sometimes have to do that over and over and over again. You know, if you're an engineer and you're designing a catalytic converter at Chrysler, for instance, you're probably not going to go with the first design that you come up with. You're going to design that catalytic converter, you're going to test it, you're going to see how it reduces certain types of emissions, how well it works, you're going to see how much the materials cost, you're going to see if you can change any of those things to improve that. And so that's what I want you to do, is I want you to get into this pattern. Writing is not easy. I know most of you have incredible work ethics based on your resumes. I know that many of you are used to hard work, and writing is hard work, but there are things that we can do to make sure that we're always sort of gaining ground, getting traction, and moving forward. And feedback and revision are the way to do that. So I want everybody, even if you got glowing reviews from me on your technical review, I want you to revisit and see if any of these things apply to you. I want you to see if you need to provide any more context. I want you to see if you need to make any more comparisons. I want you to see if you should provide any personal experience that really illustrates some of the things that you're saying. And I certainly want you to really think carefully about how you've decided to structure or lay out the document, because I really think that goes a long way in determining the reader's interaction with it. So that's just something I want you to keep in mind. Okay? The other thing that I want to talk about is your instructions assignment. And this is really, the resume and cover letter is the assignment that folks generally comment on in their feedback on the course. They say that it's really beneficial, that they really enjoyed it, they got a lot out of it, and that's great. And I realize why that is, and that's because that has a direct relationship to you getting a job, and that's certainly really important. I would say, from my vantage point as the instructor, the second most important assignment in this class is the instructions assignment. And the reason for that is that most workplaces are organized based on a set of procedures. In many places, they're called standard operating procedures. Sometimes they're called desk-level procedures, but they're the things that organize the work that we do, and they're really important. And so the ability to guide people's actions is super important. Okay, we want to be able to explain to people how to do things. Now, it's really easy on this assignment to set the bar for yourself really low and to just hold yourself accountable to getting somebody from point A to point B. Okay, and really good instructions do much more than that. Okay, instructions in the workplace do a number of things that are really, really important, and so that's why they have to be optimal. Really good instructions aren't just a list of steps. Instead, they are the most efficient way to do something. They are the most cost-effective way to do something. They are the safest way to do something. They are the way to do something that puts the least amount of stress on the equipment or the tools. They're the least frustrating way to do something, okay? So what I really want you to think about in this exercise as we write our instructions is not about getting somebody from point A to point B. That's easy. Anybody could do that. It's not hard. But what I want you to think about is, can I get somebody from point A to point B matching all of those superlatives that I just list? The most efficient, the safest, the most cost-effective, okay, with the least frustration. And that's the goal that we need to set for ourselves. And so that's something that we're really going to reflect on, because instructions are super important in the workplace. Okay? Instructions are the way that we maintain quality. They're the way that we maintain safe work environments. They're the way that we maintain compliance. They're the way that we make sure that we're not damaging needlessly or putting undue stress on equipment and tools. And so it's really important for us to be very skilled at writing instructions that do this. Okay, later in the week, I'm going to teach you a three-step or three-move process to writing instructions, and it's organized around three things: staging, coaching, and alerting. Okay, there's also a handout about this, and I'm going to illustrate these in another video lecture, so you don't have to worry about this now. We're at about 15 minutes as it is. But just keep that in mind, that as I'm asking you to write these instructions, and keep in mind, this is worth 20% of your grade, so this is not an insignificant assignment. It's really easy to think, I'm going to turn in, a list of 15 steps. That's not good enough. Okay, we want to make sure that the user of these instructions gets through this procedure that you're writing about with the least amount of frustration, the least amount of unanswered questions, with the least amount of waste, with the least opportunity to get injured or to harm themselves or damage something. So we're really shooting for something that's much greater than from A to B. We're trying to write an optimal set of instructions that leads to consistent, predictable, safe, efficient outcomes, and that's what we're up against, okay? And so it's not easy, it's going to take work, but we're going to get there, okay? So I look forward to seeing the revisions of your technical reviews. I hope that you can work on those and make some strides on those given the feedback that I've provided you and what I've provided here in this video lecture. And I also hope that you are finding the feedback that I'm giving you on the final drafts of your resume and cover letter to be useful too. Remember that a resume and cover letter, like everything else that we're writing in this class, is never done. It's just due. There's just a time that you have to submit it, but you can constantly get in there and refine the language, refine the format, and tailor the information to the particular needs of your audience. So that's really what we're up against. So I look forward to making another video for you here in the middle of the week so I can talk to you about those 3 essential moves to writing instructions. And then really what we're going to do is over the break I'm going to have you draft a set of instructions so that when we come back in what will be then, I guess, week number 9, we're cooking with gas. So anyway, I appreciate it very much. If you have any questions, concerns, you need any additional help or anything, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. As always, I'm here to help you. You have my email, have my phone, etc. So please make use of me as a resource in this class. All right, take care.